Today I decided to make just a little video blog about um, right and wrong, about rules, about law, just philosophically, not really necessarily our constitutional republic form of government, but just the idea of any human society has rules, and then there are times when the rules aren't the rules and there's a different set of rules, but there are always rules about when the rules that normally govern are not the governing rules, and when you phase shift to a different lateral or subset of rules. So usually there is a rule. It's reasonability. Usually around the globe there's some type of logical conceptuality of reasonability when rule systems phase shift. C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, talks about how around the globe each society has a basic common norm set of accepted behaviors, and he doesn't talk about standard deviations. Emil Durkheim talks about deviance and standard deviations away from like a normal midline set of behavior rules. But every society, as C.S. Lewis talks about, has a line that people can cross that almost everybody just says no, that's against the rules. Nobody, and his way of talking about right and wrong, and then is that nobody ever really says to hell with your rules, right? So rules are always there. Like people inside their hearts naturally feel that there is a line, that there is a right and wrong. So we have in our modern American political situation, we have people talking about different bases for decision making and rule sets, a different ethos of what rules to follow. So, I mean, you can have a willing suspension of disbelief and listen to almost anybody who isn't an extremist in any direction, and you can see that at the heart of their argument there is something that is compelling about what they're doing, or else they wouldn't have any followers. They wouldn't compel anybody to follow them. I am a constitutional originalist. I feel I'm a conservative, but maybe I'm a liberal Republican. That's why I unregistered from the Republican Party. I don't vote Democrat, even though I think some of the social gospel literature that I read in college at Cal Lutheran, earning my religion major, it was rather compelling. The idea of building a modern society um, that takes care of all people, but we have the rubber meets the road situation of businesses and the wealthy people who end up becoming wealthy because of businesses, and then this idea of like overly taxing them. These are the things that create jobs. That's compelling to me, that if we have a living wage type of scenario that people willingly follow, I think rather than having to be made to pay a living wage to people as an employer business, that people need to have that as their goal in the first place when they're starting businesses. I started thinking about all this today, listening to Eli the computer guy talk about, woke culture inside of the tech industry, and how these big businesses, and I have a very small tech business, Sentinel Trust, owns DocuPletionForms.com, and it's our flagship software as a service product. It's a conditional logic contact information intake form that allows you to fill out documents. So, and we integrate with all these different programs, and we're always building little elements. We're working on our Zapier right now, but you can connect to Zapier still, or do webhooks to Zapier. But they say that they make these billions of dollars and hire like thousands of employees, and then 10% of them kind of fall to the bottom. And this is Eli's view, and he was a soldier in the army, a tech MOS, computers, hardware, or something. I don't know. I was a tank mechanic in the Marine Reserves. I scored in the 99th percentile in the ASVAB, though, so I could have taken my pick of any MOS, but there are only availabilities in areas. That's besides the point. They say that the people who are the cream of the crop of these tech businesses get assigned to these different work projects, and then the people who kind of go to the bottom. There's still enough money to pay their paycheck, but they are almost like a criminal underclass in society. In a Marxist societal analysis, you have the criminal underclass, and they don't have any money, and so they do crime for money. Well, these guys don't have anything to do, so they make up they pinpoint customers and clients of theirs that they want to then attack and get rid of in the name of a woke ideology, because that other business doesn't do business the way they want them to. And it's really against it's like you become a criminal against your business's business aims in the first place. But let's start thinking about when things are right and wrong. I think maybe something that people should do, if you are in a business and you can convince your business that one of your customers has some business practice that you don't like, you could talk with that business rather than just like drive them away. Say, hey, is there any way that this is something that you are already thinking about trying to, make different? I mean, the issues get really, really convoluted because we see African American poverty in the United States and crime. There's always different arguments about the correlation between the two. And we see, all the Black Lives Matter cases where people have asserted that the police have abused their power and used excessive force, and there were not justified killings. But we have the case law, which is all we really have. It says it's reasonable for a police officer to show up. Graham v. Connor, it's reasonable when a police officer is called and there's a report of somebody with a gun outside a liquor store, that person who meets the description, you take them to be an armed person. Even if you can't see a gun, you think there's a gun in the pocket, probably. If that person immediately reaches for their pocket, that person's going to get shot. I mean, and that is reasonable. That's the rule of reasonability. Somehow everything's been turned around to where society thinks that a police officer has to be hit with a bullet before they're allowed to even pull their service pistol, is almost the logic, and it's completely unreasonable. You wouldn't do that in protecting yourself, and that's what the social contract is that creates police, is that we abdicate the right to at all points and the duty, and we are freed from the duty at all points to protect ourselves. We don't have to create our own military or be our own police or exercise our own police power. You are allowed to defend yourself, keep yourself alive, and the police definitely do not automatically show up right before you get killed by someone. So you do need to, if you want to stay alive, to protect yourself. But that is completely reasonable of a type of thing. And then the any fleeing felon rule, Tennessee v. Gardner, was changed to any dangerous fleeing felon because of the outrage in Tennessee of this kid who was burglarizing an apartment, and he ran away and he jumped on a chain link fence and was climbing over and was shot in the back by a police officer. And that was the rule of law right then, but it just seemed egregiously wrong that someone climbing a fence who was unarmed was shot in the back. So there has to be this determination since 1985 that someone poses a threat or a danger to the police officer or to others. But that has also created in the American psyche a perceived constitutionally protected right to flee from police, which is not there. You don't have the right to flee. You don't have the right to resist arrest. You don't have the right to assault police. Coming from a youth ministry background, allinservice.org is my little blueprint that any church or other religious group or non-religious community group can do to help kids on juvenile probation to complete community service. I did this as a Young Life area director in Victorville. The point of it, though, is conversationally talking with these kids while we were doing our roadside cleanup. I just kind of try to encourage them, don't fight the cops, because some of them were injured, and one guy specifically was running away from the cops, and they tackled him. He's injured, has a messed up knee. I said, yeah, that's what happens. I'm sorry about your knee. Fighting the cops, that's when they're going to use force. But if you just give up, just stop, you have a much lower percentage chance of being injured, depending on what just happened. I mean, the overall advice to humanity is don't do things to cause the cops to come after you, and that's my advice and mentorship to these guys too. But in the situation, we're always talking about their arrest situations. So, we have a shifting set of rules, and it's an oversimplification. To me, it's just a slap in the face of all of Americans to have Colin Kaepernick come down here on a big Veterans, I can't remember if it was Veterans Day weekend, but to take a knee the way he did, and then point out that try to say that all these Black Lives Matters cases were wrong. And he's a quarterback who's supposed to study film, but he doesn't understand the actual rules of the game of these films that we're watching. These guys all were reasonably suspected of being armed. Then they try to reach for something to run. There's a reason why these police were not convicted of murder or assault or anything. It's because those are the rules. You have to actually know what the rules are. So rules are rules, but sometimes there's a different set of rules that governs, and you can't just listen to popular opinions. So I know it's the same message you hear from all these different conservative people. I'm probably preaching to the choir. Anybody who this could actually get to will not listen 11 minutes of a video of me talking about when the rules are rules and when the nuanced subset of rules kick in and when there's a parallel set of rules and when it's actually a different situation. It's just that we do have rules. We do have a constitutional republic. And by nature, humans intellectually automatically assent to there being a right and wrong of each situation that we come into contact with. Like maybe we're better off as a species in smaller groups, like smaller tribes. Maybe we're way overpopulated on the planet, and that's how these things happen. A clash of cultures and a feeling of resentment. I don't know. I'm definitely, obviously, white with blue eyes, upper middle class, college educated. I can't say that I can't say that I know how people who are black in an impoverished situation in an urban setting feel. I know I didn't feel great with my biological father going to prison in Oregon when I was 3, but I had a really cool stepdad automatically. Stuff like that. It's maybe a touch point of understanding about someone whose parent goes to prison. But I still I can't claim to you that, oh, I know how you feel. I don't know how you feel. We weren't then poor. I mean, we were in a pretty bad bind when my biological father went to prison. But my mom still owned a house that was rented to someone. We moved into the garage. And then my mom and my stepdad got together, and my stepdad's dad owned the local newspaper. So, I mean, we had all our basic needs taken care of. We were not in poverty. But it was just this emotional thing. So, I know it doesn't feel great, and you multiply that across a whole society and culture. I just think that we should not be up in arms against each other culturally. In social media, we have these platforms. Like, I could sit here behind all the layers of my social media and say whatever rude thing I want. I think people should calm down. The rioting and stuff I'm not even approaching talking about that. It's ridiculous. It's a bunch of Trustafarians fomenting revolution. You're all listening to Rasta music and dreading your hair as white kids. Like, come on, knock it off. It's sort of ridiculous. Okay, now I'm talking about it. It's sort of ridiculous, but we have rules and you should follow them, and they're natural, and they're in your heart, and you shouldn't fight the cops is what it is. You should stop before you have the urge to get in a fist fight with police. Because bad things happen. Alright, there it is. That's my lecture on rules is rules.